Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex, coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... So, had a little shaving mishap here, and I don't like it. I don't like it when my face is visible like this. I miss my facial hair. Yeah, I left some stubble, but you can see this. I've never liked this, whatever the hell this is. But I guess I ought to get used to it because in a few years I'm sure it's going to be down here and it's going to be nothing but turkey neck. And of course, gonna try to make the best out of a bad situation. I mean, plus side is you can grab it and go blah, 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 blah. Yeah, about that. This weekend, I'm reviewing Michelle Remembers by Michelle Smith and Lawrence Pazder, MD. Now, before I get started, I would like to note that I first learned of Michelle Remembers when I read Paperbacks from Hell by Grady Hendrix. And upon reading its premise, it sounded like this out-of-print work would be pretty interesting. So I went on to eBay and snagged a copy for dirt cheap at that time. Then, after I received my copy in, it ended up going onto the bookshelf where it collected dust for the next few years. Well, recently I was playing around on Instagram and noticed where the booktuber Plagued by Visions noted that he was about to start reading Michelle Remembers. So I commented, yeah, I'd been meaning to read that as well, I just haven't done it for whatever reason, but let me know what you think. And to my surprise, he invited me to buddy read this with him. And I was totally ecstatic because I've always been a fan of his channel, which, by the way, if you're not following his channel, I've included a link to him in the description section of this episode. So be sure to subscribe and all of that good stuff because he has a lot of fun book reviews. But anywho, back to what I was saying. I was really happy that he invited me to do this buddy read with him, and we had a lot of great discussions about this book that had paraded itself around as being nonfiction. And because of that, it kick-started the Satanic Panic. Well, now that everyone knows how me reading Michelle Remembers came to be, I would like to add that I don't review books that I don't enjoy. So, for that reason, this video is going to be a first because Michelle Remembers was not a good book. And I'm not going to do a spoiler section in this episode because I didn't have any favorite moments and I didn't find anything shocking. Also, there were really no twists and turns and all of that good stuff. It was just pretty cut and dry. And yeah, so this will be a different sort of video. And even though I didn't enjoy this book, I really did enjoy the experience I had with Plagued by Visions, as we had a lot of great discussions about this work, and we had a pretty good time ripping it apart because, I mean, the book deserves to be ripped apart. And it did somewhat satisfy my curiosity because this is something I had been curious about for a while now. And so now I can say I've read it, it wasn't good, time to move on. But without me rambling on anymore, let's go back in time and see exactly what it is that Michelle claims to remember. Michelle Remembers by Michelle Smith and Lawrence Pazder, MD, opens with a seal of approval from Pope Paul VI and Bishop Remy DeRue. After that, we end up getting a note from the publisher who speaks about Michelle and Lawrence's character and stresses that they did not write this for money and that they were good, modest people. Then, before the story actually starts, we receive a letter from Pazder who explains what we're about to read is a document of Michelle remembering the traumatic abuse that she suffered at age 5, which covers the total of 14 months. From here, the story opens with Michelle having been hospitalized due to a miscarriage that she suffered 6 weeks prior. And because of that loss, she's not been able to stop bleeding. Also, due to her emotional issues in regards to this tragedy, her general practitioner has called in Lawrence Pazder, who had been her therapist in the past in regards to family problems. So, once Lawrence arrives at her bedside, Michelle explains that she had a nightmare where there was an itchy spot on her hand, and when she scratched it, spiders came out. Well, since Lawrence feels like this is a symbol for something deeper, he explains to her that he would like to start office sessions once she's released. Then, after the sessions begin, Lawrence proceeds by using a method on Michelle known as recovered memory therapy, where they learn that Michelle's mother had given her to an abusive satanic cult when she was a child. As the story progresses, Michelle recalls rituals that were led by a man named Malachi and his accomplice, who was a female nurse. And in these rituals, Michelle is rubbed down with what could possibly be excrement, she is sodomized with divination sticks, and is forced into cannibalism. Then, as if things couldn't get any worse, the cult puts her in a grave and throws dead kittens at her. They rub her down with dead babies. They graft devil horns and a devil tail onto her body. And they trick her into defecating on a cross and the Bible. Also, after we think things cannot become any more outrageous, the cult puts Michelle in a case-like statue of Satan where they hold a black mass that's known as the Feast of the Beast, which in this ritual they summon the physical manifestation of Satan, who stays on earth for the total of a few weeks, where he is to gift his followers power so they can carry out his evil deeds. Michelle Remembers by Michelle Smith and Lawrence Pazder, M.D., was published in 1980 as nonfiction. Yet no evidence was ever found to support its allegations, and upon its release, it raised eyebrows and doubt. Nonetheless, that didn't stop the book from sparking the satanic panic, which began a witch hunt that spanned well into the 90s. At the start of its run, Pazder stated the Church of Satan instigated Michelle's abuse. However, Pazder ceased those allegations when Anton LaVey threatened him with a lawsuit for libel. In an issue of Maclean's magazine, Paul Gresco interviewed Michelle's father, Jack, who claimed he could refute what his daughter and Pazder had published. He added the book failed to mention that Michelle had siblings, and how Michelle and Pazder, who were both Catholics, divorced their spouses and married each other. Eventually, Smith's childhood neighbors, teachers, and friends were interviewed, and no one could vouch for Smith being absent from school for long periods of time, which would have happened during the lengthy Feast of the Beast ritual. Unfortunately, despite all the red flags, Smith and Pazder became the world's foremost specialist in satanic ritual abuse, and they appeared on The Oprah Winfrey Show, Donahue, Geraldo, and 2020. Also, Smith and Pazder directed seminars for mental health care professionals who would go on to diagnose hundreds of women as sufferers of ritual abuse. Aside from mental health professionals, social workers and law enforcement attended Smith and Pazder's workshops and adapted their methods into their own professions. This led to the infamous McMartin case, which had not been labeled as satanic until Smith and Pazder became involved. This instance would become the first of many child care centers that were falsely accused of satanic ritual abuse, and in these cases, authorities coerced children into admitting to outrageous claims. To stoke these fires more, televangelists Pat Robertson and Jerry Falwell spoke of American Christians fighting a holy war. And eventually, the belief manifested that forms of entertainment, such as heavy metal music, were sending secret and subliminal messages to its listeners to worship Satan. Over time, Bishop Remy DeRue said he was impressed by Pazder's credentials and Smith's storytelling. He admitted he listened to the story and accompanied Smith and Pazder to the Vatican, where Smith's story was recounted to higher church authorities. He added, although Smith's claims did seem extraordinary, they were not outside the realm of belief for a deeply faithful and spiritually committed man, and that a bishop requires a degree of open-mindedness to the possibility of evil. Michelle Remembers by Michelle Smith and Lawrence Pazder, MD, is a book that is poorly written, it's repetitive, and it drones on forever and forever without stopping. Like, the best way for me to sum this up is for you to imagine that you're trapped in a room with someone who will not shut up. And you know everything they're telling you is one great big lie. And as they continue rambling on and on, you feel your energy being drained because you cannot take listening to their never-ending line of bullshit. That's Michelle Remembers. Also, I would like to stress that abuse is not a laughing matter. However, the claims in this book become so far out there, I had no other choice but to laugh. Like, for example, there's a scene where the cult gives Michelle an enema, and she craps all over a Bible and a cross. Now, I didn't laugh at this because of what the character went through. I laughed at this because these two bullshit artists who wrote the book decided to stoop to this low of a level for shock value. Which I shouldn't be surprised because this book is nothing but cheap shock value. And it becomes more and more unbelievable the further you read. Like, it gets to a point where we are introduced to a character in the book who is possessed. And this person's head spins all the way around, just like Reagan in The Exorcist. Then we are presented with a scenario where this Frankenstein-esque sort of monster is made from the body parts of dead people. Then when electricity is applied, it jumps around. And we are meant to believe that this really happened. Now, out of everything in this book that couldn't be humanly possible, the Feast of the Beast scenario totally took the cake. Which, as I had mentioned a few moments ago, this was the idea that the cultists had summoned the devil in the flesh. And after he's risen, we expect for him to perhaps wreak havoc and run around destroying everything. But no, Satan does nothing more than hang out at the sanctuary where he counts bones and spouts off elementary level spoken word poetry. And what I really love about this is Michelle and Lawrence try to take the spotlight off of their crappy writing by explaining that, yes, Satan does sound childish, but his words should be taken seriously because this is a book of non-fiction. Y'all, all Michelle and Lawrence did here was try to provide the devil with some cool dialogue, but in the process they discovered that they sucked at poetry. And I could totally see them attempting to write some good poetry for a few hours, then finally throwing their hands up in the air and saying, you know what, it doesn't matter that the devil sounds like he stepped out of the Cat in the Hat. We're marketing this as non-fiction. So, not our fault the devil sounds this way. Then, to drive the nail into this shitfest even deeper, Michelle saves the world by stealing one of Satan's bones. Now, you would think that Satan would do something colorful here to get his bone back. But no, all he really does is throw a tantrum and stomp his feet, and when Michelle refuses to return the bone to him, he simply gives up and returns to hell. Which, this makes the Satanists surrender, and they go back to their normal lives as being doctors, lawyers, politicians, teachers, celebrities, what have you. But to add the cherry on the cake, because of Michelle's brave decision and her keeping the bone from Satan, she now meets with Jesus and the Mother Mary. Then, after they have a brief meeting, Michelle's life returns to normal and all of her wounds are magically healed. Y'all, this book is a prime example of how if you're going to create a lie out of hopes of generating revenue, then at least make your lie believable. Like, for example, don't have a person's head spin all the way around if you expect for people to take you seriously. And if you're bold enough to state that the devil stayed on Earth for 80 some odd days spouting out spoken word poetry, at least make his poetry on par with Shakespeare and not Dr. Seuss. Also, even though I'm not an atheist, I honestly don't believe there's any power out there that can remove all physical injury from a person by the snap of a finger. Now, as far as the publisher saying that this book wasn't written for money, I would like to note that Michelle and Lawrence received a $100,000 hardback advance and a $242,000 paperback advance. Not to mention they received royalties as well as a potential movie deal and everything in between. So, if you ask me, Michelle Remembers was written to generate commerce, and Michelle and Lawrence didn't care who or what they had to lie about in order to gain fame. As I said, Plagued by Visions and I had a lot of great discussions while we were reading, which a lot of those discussions regarded how we noticed the propaganda of this book was still relevant today, especially in regards to how it is with conspiracy theory groups like QAnon, which, from my understanding, QAnon believes there's a satanic pedophile ring of celebrities in Hollywood who drink the blood of abused children so they can maintain their wealth and youth. And as we were talking, some of our discussions regarded the characters in this work, and I honestly did not feel a single ounce of sorrow for Michelle, mostly because you could tell this was one great big lie. And as Plagued by Visions and I were talking, we agreed that we felt sorry for the people who were affected by Michelle and Lawrence's lies, especially since their lies caused a lot of innocent people to undergo interrogations and court. And I imagine since people believed in the satanic panic as deeply as what they did, I do not doubt that it broke apart a lot of friendships and families, much like what's going on today. Overall, Michelle Remembers didn't scare me, creep me out, or gross me out. And even though I guess it did shock a group of people back in the day, it didn't shock me. And to be honest, if this book was still in circulation and it was still being paraded around as nonfiction, after reading this, I could have told anyone this book was fake and full of it. I mean, there's just so much in here that could not be possible because it's so outrageous. Michelle Remembers by Michelle Smith and Lawrence Pazder, MD, is a book that deserves to be out of print because it is a huge insult to anyone who has ever suffered from child abuse. Also, it's honestly nothing more than a money-making scheme that was built on lies. So, at the end of the day, I don't recommend this book. But if you happen to find this at a used bookstore for $3 or $4 and you just have to have it for your collection, then by all means, go on and get it. But personally, I wouldn't spend anything over $5 on this tripe. And to be honest, you might start reading this and feel like, hey, at least I'm satisfying my curiosity. But the further you read, the more you might start to feel like you're wasting time you're never going to regain. Well, I know that was a brutal review, but it was an honest review. It's how I really felt about it, and if you believe all the crap that's in this book, that's on you. I'm not going to bash you for it. Just know you're not going to change my mind into believing that this crap was real. So, yeah, that's the first bad review I've ever done. Hopefully I did it with some degree of respect, but if I didn't, oh well, life continues. But now that it's time to close out this video, I would like to thank these amazing people for contributing to my Patreon account. As you can tell, some of the names listed here are creators, so be sure to check out their work. And if you would like to contribute to my Patreon account, I have a link available in the description section of this episode, where for $5 a month, I'll give you a shout out at the end of my videos like what you see here. And if you have a certain profession you would like for me to tie to your name, just let me know and I'll include that as well. Also, I do have a $10 tier available, which this will still get you the shout out that you see at the end of my videos. But at the beginning of every month, I'll send you over one of my creepy photos as I do creepy photography on the side. So if you're able to do this, that's awesome. If not, no sweat. I just hope you return to this channel so we can have a good time together. Also, if you would like to hunt me down on social media, links to my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are all available in the description section of this episode, as well as a link to my Amazon wish list if you would care to spoil me. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell because I have more reviews coming in the near future. So until we see each other again, I hope you have a great week and sweet nightmares.